Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are back with Batman Ghost Stories, and we get the origin of Ghostmaker. Now, I say this origin loosely, not because we don't get a full origin, we do, but I feel like this might be expanded on later on by James Tynion. So kind of keep your eyes out for the idea that we might get more of an expansion here. Another thing that we're doing here is I'm going to give away a Rob Core ring on the Discord server. So make sure you guys check out the Discord server down in the description. I'm going to give one away on Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern time when I do my weekly Q&A. So make sure you guys check that out. And then I'm also going to list Rob Core rings for sale again once we get around to really closer to Christmas time, right? So maybe here in about a week or so, I'm going to list them for sale. That way you guys can buy them and then you guys can get them in time for Christmas. So that's going to be cool. That's going to be fun. I also will have size 12 rings. So those of you guys who need size 12s, we actually have those in stock now. They just recently came in. So yes. So having said that, we're covering this origin right now. This whole thing comes in the aftermath of the last video, the last story that we did, where Batman alongside Clown Killer and Harley Quinn were all basically captured by Ghostmaker, right? They were all defeated by Ghostmaker. So at this point, they're all basically stuck in Arkham Asylum. And it's one of these funny things where Batman basically wakes up before everybody else, but that's because of the fact that he's Batman. That's not true. It's because of the fact that Ghostmaker didn't give him as much of didn't give him as strong of a shot of basically the thing that knocked him out, the anesthetic, as he did with Harley Quinn and Clown Killer, right? Because he wanted a Batman to wake up early because he wanted to have this conversation directly with him. And the whole idea is we don't really find out the full depth of this conversation. Instead, it's really him just kind of talking to Batman and saying that with everything going on, that this Clown Killer kid is basically just, or at least Clown Hunter, I guess his official name, is basically just the latest symptom of this disease, right? That Batman has essentially failed as a superhero in almost every way, right? That Gotham is not better because of Batman, Gotham's actually worse. And so what we end up doing here, before we get this kind of full-on explanation, is we switch over to Barbara Gordon, right? We switch over to Batgirl, who's basically talking to Dick Grayson, right? While, a crime's kind of happening, some criminals are robbing a bank and Dick Grayson's beating them up and talking to her at the same time, which makes sense, right? Because, Dick Grayson, he can do almost anything. And so what we end up finding out is that in the time, with Batman having been missing for the last 6 hours, and the time that Ghostmaker's been in the city of Gotham, that Professor Pig was found back in Arkham Asylum, despite the fact that he was on the loose. The Yakuza triads and the Whisper Gang have all just abandoned the city completely, right? That 6 people were found dead at the Iceberg Lounge of the Penguin, and the Penguin himself is believed to be underground in one of his bunkers, that effectively the criminal element in Gotham has just vanished, right? Just seemingly disappeared overnight. These guys just took off. And that's when Nightwing kind of chimes in, I can't believe the Ghostmaker actually came to Gotham. And it basically gives us this idea that Dick Grayson knows who the Ghostmaker is, and it's something that he's actually known for quite some time, because that's what Barbara Gordon asked him. She's like, how do you know who the Ghostmaker is? And he's like, oh, I've known about him for a long time, right? But I've only ever seen him once. And what he does is he recalls this story from back when he was younger, right? Back when around the time that he first became Robin. And he talks about how him and Batman had basically been chasing some guy, right? Some low-level guy that was making a break and fleeing the United States. And Batman and them had basically tracked him down to this location. And once they got to an airport where this guy was going to be taking off at, then suddenly they were met by the arrival of Ghostmaker, who had already essentially captured this villain. And as soon as they get out, and as soon as Batman sees it's Ghostmaker, Batman gets back in the Batwing and then tells Robin, we're going back to Gotham. And when Robin's like, why? Like who is this guy? Like, why are we just gonna go back to Gotham? Batman kind of starts talking about when he was younger and when he started undergoing this whole process of becoming Batman, right? If you guys, any of you guys recall, this was especially important during Batman Year One by Frank Miller, which really covered all that stuff. It's one of the reasons why Frank Miller's Batman work is kind of considered to be some of the seminal Batman work that exists out there, because it did so much retelling of his origin, and a lot of those things that have kind of been changed or removed over the years are in a lot of ways ignored by fans. And it's kind of considered to be like the definitive story, right? Batman Year One is largely believed to be the definitive Batman story. Batman Year Zero from the New 52, a lot of fans kind of basically marry that with Batman Year One, and then just kind of combine them together for a singular story, right? And say, this is how Bruce Wayne became Batman. This is how it all sort of came together. But the long and short of this is that when Bruce Wayne starts talking about his life when he was younger, that he traveled around the world to all these different places, right? That when his parents died, he made a promise to himself, made this oath that he would basically live live a war against criminals, and he wanted to become the kind of person that could fulfill that oath. And so he went from place to place training with all different kinds of people, right? He trained with Zatanna's father, he trained with Wildcat, I think is what his name is, I don't know. He trained with all these different people, but along the way, he met this young guy. And this young guy that he met really kind of proved to be somebody whose ego was just ridiculously unbearable, but it was a person who thought very much the same way Bruce Wayne did, that it wasn't just enough to become skilled in like a singular martial art and dedicate their life to that. He wanted to become the absolute best crime fighter he could possibly be. And what Bruce Wayne found here was a kind of camaraderie, right? It was him and this guy working together and kind of presenting each other with these almost unsolvable mysteries, these unsolvable problems, basically how to make the world a better place, dreaming about technology in the future, how crime can be solved, different things like that. And so when with Bruce Wayne kind of finding this friend, this guy who was basically as egotistical as he was a very, very strong competitor and was a very close friend of Bruce Wayne finally revealed his story, saying that he's the son of Thomas and Martha, that his parents were killed, and that following that, he basically wanted to kind of wage war against crime in order to bring all that to an end, right? So nobody would have to go through what he went through. The response to that was Ghostmaker got pissed. He got so mad. And the reason why he tried to kill Bruce Wayne is that he told him he was weak, that Ghostmaker was angry because he believed that he'd found somebody like him, right? Somebody who was doing all of this for the art of it, right? Because it was just a thing that they desired, a thing that they pursued to simply just better themselves and better the world around them, that it wasn't some childish idea of vengeance. Now, this is a really interesting concept. This is a really interesting thing. A lot of times when you see characters like Ghostmaker presented in comic books that have an origin story like this, where they meet the main hero and the two of them become enemies, sometimes it's because of the fact that, especially in a situation like this, that they were somehow less capable than the hero themselves. And it's all just been an effort to prove that they're just as capable. For Ghostmaker, it's not that way. It's like, no, I really want to make the world a better place. I want to do this to make the world better. You're doing it because you're mad that your mommy and daddy got shot. And it's just, and that's basically what it is, right? And that's what's so cool, is because it moves Ghostmaker away from this guy who's just like, once upon a time, him and Bruce Wayne met each other. Bruce Wayne got a black belt before him, and he's been pissed ever since. Instead of that, instead of something stupid and basic like that, it's no, like you're just filled with vengeance, right? Like you don't really have a desire to make the world better because you're being altruistic. You want to make the world better because your mommy and daddy got shot, you're full of rage, and you want to make sure that nobody else has to go through that again. Golly gee, you're gonna save the day. And in a lot of ways, it kind of diminishes Batman. If I'm being honest with you guys, I feel like it kind of diminishes him. Not necessarily in a terrible way, right? It doesn't make him any less capable, but it really puts into perspective the goal of Batman, right? He's just a little kid crying because his parents got shot. That it really is all just based on vengeance and anger. He's, in essence, every ounce of a vigilante, whereas Ghostmaker is being presented here from the words of Batman as a guy who's doing all this because he genuinely and truly wants to make the world better. And that totally changes the idea that he'll just kill villains, right? It's not him killing them because it's easy. It is, technically it is easy. So by default, that's a true statement. But he does that because dead men cannot be repeat offenders. Dead men cannot go back and commit crimes all over again. Now, I know it seems to take away from the human element, but Ghostmaker also seems to kind of have this sort of threshold, right? Where it's one thing to run criminals out of town, it's another to kill them. And there's this kind of standard that he arbitrarily creates, which is once they start committing acts egregious enough, then we kill them. And it seems to be the standard he created, which is a reasonable one, is that if a villain basically becomes a killer, then we kill him in turn, right? They sacrificed their right to life when they took somebody else's. And so it's kind of interesting here, right? It's an interesting concept because from there, like Robin kind of looks at that and he's listening to the story that Batman's telling him. And he's like, well, you know, you're not weak, right? I mean, like, I don't have to tell you that, but you know, that's not true. And Batman's like, well, I don't feel weak. And that's when Dick Grayson picks up on it, but you miss your friend. And Batman's like, yes, I miss my friend. I miss the person that I spent so much time with. Now, following that, and when he continues kind of talking to Barbara Gordon about all this, one of the things that he says is that when Batman jump-started Batman Incorporated, he reached out to Ghostmaker. Now, for those of you guys who don't know what that is, Batman Incorporated was part of the Grant Morrison run, right? So Grant Morrison's Batman run is considered by a lot of fans to be one of the absolute best Batman runs, and rightfully so. It's amazing. Like, it's a ridiculously good Batman series of Batman stories. But the idea of the chronology is that during the events of Final Crisis, Batman was shot by Doomsday with, you know, his Omega Sanction or whatever, and technically it should have killed Batman because it would have killed anybody else who was just a regular human, but he was sent back in time because he's too popular for DC to cancel. And so that gave us a story, The Return of Bruce Wayne. During that time when Bruce Wayne was traveling through time, that you had Dick Grayson who became Batman and Damian Wayne became the new Robin. Robin. And so you got that series of stories, focusing on the Dick Grayson Batman era. And then of course, once Bruce Wayne came back, his thought was, okay, we need to expand the Bat family, right? And so that's when the Bat family went international. And so it was basically him traveling around to all these different places where he found individuals who were effectively people fighting crime that seemed to have like minds, right? So that's where you end up getting like Lucius Fox's son, where you have like, what is it, Batwing, I think is what he's called. You have like a lot of those characters that kind of come into play. Bruce Wayne grabbed a lot of these guys and then brought them into the Bat family, basically to kind of make Batman a worldwide concept. When he reached out to Ghostmaker, it apparently didn't go well, right? Now this is James Tynion throwing in new information that didn't exist before, right? Because Ghostmaker didn't exist until this story. So he's just kind of adding this stuff in. And then it turned into when Dick Grayson was working for Spiral, as during that terrible run where he was a spy, that he basically ended up looking around for Ghostmaker, and that most of the intelligence community considers him to be an urban legend. But there are a few classified reports that Dick Grayson had read that showed a kind of run-in between the Great Tin in China and Ghostmaker himself. And so it's one of these things that if you knew where to look, you could find evidence that Ghostmaker was real, right? But it's one of these things where he would basically show up into a city for about a year or so, he would eliminate all the crime, and then he would leave before anybody ever really even knew he was there, or without anybody ever even knowing he was ever there, right? So like he's just that wildly capable, and so this guy is, very much lives up to his namesake. He's a ghost, right? This guy is a phantom. Now, the funny thing about this, and as I was reading this screams the Winter Soldier from Ed Brubaker's Captain America, right? Now, it's not the first time we've ever seen anything like that, right? Ed Brubaker was not the very first person to ever take a character who had previously died and then brought them back as somebody who had been used for espionage, right? Ed Brubaker was not the first person to ever do that, right? So before people show up, see, this is DC stealing from Marvel, I guess. I mean, if you consider Ed Brubaker to be the only person to ever do that in the history of literature, then sure, I guess, but that's not true. So it reminded me of that in a lot of different ways, right? But the cool thing about this is you end up picking back up with Barbara Gordon, and you have Cassandra Cain, who's basically talking to her and saying, hey, look, we're here at the site that this happened, but the only evidence we have in terms of where they went is a plant on the wall that basically spells Arkham, and that's how we know where he took him. The poison ivy plant, what's left of poison ivy, is basically just telling them, like, go to Arkham Asylum, right? Now, from there, we switch back over to Arkham itself, and you've got Clown Hunter, you've got Batman. And Batman, of course, already being awake, when Harley Quinn wakes up, Clown Hunter is like, hey, like, okay, what's going on here, right? And of course, once she starts talking to him, Clown Hunter gets pissed, right? It's, don't talk to me. But Batman basically says, this is all a test, right? This is a test by Ghostmaker to prove that you, Clown Hunter, are every bit as bad as he believes you are. That if you give a criminal the means to commit a crime, that's what they will do, because criminals are bad people and criminals commit crimes. That they cannot be redeemed, they cannot be fixed, they cannot become better people, that they just don't change. Ghostmaker is Gregory House from House MD. People don't change. But, Clown Hunter kind of seems to live up to this expectation, that he ends up discovering a couple of these swords that Ghostmaker had left for him. And then when Batman's like pleading with him, saying, no, like, do not do this. If you do this, you will prove Ghostmaker right. The response to Clown Hunter is, I don't really care, right? She was there the night the Joker killed my parents. And so even if it proves the point of Ghostmaker, I don't care. I, Clown Hunter, am going to kill Harley Quinn. But with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.